Alright, what's going on, everybody? Tiger93 here, y'all guys call me the Tiger, and today we are back. Today, guys, we have a very special stream for y'all guys. Today we are joined by some members of the KingsIsle team, as well as fellow Wizard101 content creator, KingsIsle, as we are discussing anything related to PvE and questing in general. I think this is going to be a really fun roundtable. We got a really interesting lineup of stuff we want to talk about, and overall I think it's going to be really interesting. We had a slight complication trying to start the stream up, but nevertheless we are live now, and we are very excited to get to talking about all things related to PvE. If you guys are new to the roundtables, this is just a discussion with KingsIsle regarding a specific topic. They've done roundtables with Gladrocker doing Beast Moon, they've done roundtable with Blake talking about PvP, and we also had a social roundtable that we just did a little while back on this channel as well. So these roundtables are pretty fun. We just talk about different things in the game, a lot about what the community wants to hear about, and it's going to be about an hour or so today, but I'm really excited and looking forward to it. If you guys don't know who I am, I'm Tiger93. I'm a Wizard101 content creator. I've been playing the game for quite some time now, and it truly is a huge honor to host this roundtable and be joined by these guys. I'm really excited to talk about anything and everything related to PvE. So first off, let's go ahead and introduce KingsIsle.
Hey, I'm KingsIsle. I've been making YouTube videos for about 2 years now in this game, and I'm really excited for today.
I'm really excited to really just be here with you because I know you've done a lot of videos breaking down different things in the game, and so thank you so much for joining. And let's go ahead and introduce KingsIsle, starting with Artie.
Yeah, I'm Artie, lead designer, KingsIsle. I did Beast Moon and the event stuff, and I've done some other things like helping with 5th Age and some other things. So yeah, excited to talk about adventuring and stuff in Wizards, see how we can make it better.
And we also have Spark with us today.
Hey everybody, this is Spark, Senior Community Manager here at KingsIsle, and I am super glad to be here again. This is round 2 with Tiger93, and a different topic this time. We're trying to cover a bunch of different topics on these roundtables, and I'm just glad that you, White Tiger, and Kaiser, thanks Kaiser, nice seeing you, are here to host us, to give us an opportunity to talk about these things. We only got an hour, and we're eating into that hour already, so I won't say anything more, and I'll pass the wand on to the next person.
And we are also joined by Mattnetic.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Mattnetic. I'm the principal designer. I do a lot of all things PvP, fights, gear, spells, working with the rest of the team as well. So yeah, I'm excited to answer some questions and talk, like Artie said, how we can improve the experience and talk more about PvE as a whole.
Alright, so welcome everybody. Really glad to have these guys with us. So first off, I want to mention that KingsIsle just released a dev diary this morning talking about PvE. If you guys want to talk about that real quick.
Sure, Artie, why don't you table that one, talking about the new dev diary?
Oh, sure, yeah. So, yeah, I wrote the dev diary to kind of wanted to start a conversation with the community just about various aspects of things that involve adventuring and PvE, the PvE experience, and looking at each different part of it individually, so we can see if, like, you know, is there some way that we can improve this part or that part or whatever, and it all comes together to make a whole and make the whole experience more interesting. Also, the dev diary reviewed some of the things that we've done this year to help the PvE and adventuring experience, other than what we're kind of shifting over. We're shifting over more into sort of the nitty gritty of things like gear and spells and stuff. And what we had done over the past year had been more about helping with communication, coordination, encouraging people to adventure together and find people to adventure with. And so that's really what the dev diary is doing. It's setting out a lot of kind of questions, presenting a structure to have a conversation and sort of discussion and debate about where PvE could use some improvement. So yeah, I'm excited to get it underway. Conversation and then execution.
And then, because you guys have done a lot of quality of life improvements, just recently in the test room, y'all guys added in quest filtering, because one of the biggest questions a lot of people have been asking with quests is, can I drop the side quest I picked up 6 worlds ago, or can I try to figure out what quests I need to do, or I'm on the wrong quest and I didn't know it. And so quest filtering is definitely a really good feature, so thank y'all guys for adding that in. That was something I know a lot of people are really going to like. And as well as the adventure parties from before, because now we can organize with our friends more without having to have social media. We can all agree on times to meet up, and we can all join in, kind of have this idea of what we're doing, and just kind of sticking together and questing through the game. So all really good features y'all guys have added.
Yeah, and we're mindful. We try to maintain this conversation with the community to make sure that we understand some of the things that they're struggling with, and that's what I had to feel like we needed to look at the quest journal, and this is sort of the first step, is to making that portion of the questing experience better and easier for folks. And we added some more things to the adventure parties in this milestone to make it help adventuring be easier, like reserving sigil slot for when you're in an adventure party group, a group created through an adventure party have that feature, and then also being able to use the group leader's quest arrow, so it's easier to kind of help someone else with a quest or kind of coordinate your efforts. But those are sort of ideas that come from us as we're kind of walking through the experience, but also talking to the community, and Spark talking to the community and things. So these, and the roundtables, I like because we can look at a topic and really kind of have a deeper conversation about them, either from a design philosophy standpoint or even just sort of a practical standpoint. And so, anyway, so yeah, I'm excited to see what comes of all this.
About that dev diary, by the way, real quick, I put a link into your chat, White Tiger 93. There is also links on our social pages if anybody's curious on where it is. You can also go to our main website, Wizard101.com, and if you go to the menu under Community News and select Developer Diaries, we have all the Developer Diaries there, including now yours, Artie, right at the top. And there's a link in the Developer Diary page to our discussion forums for further feedback. So if you have comments specifically on the dev diary or anything, I suppose, related to today's roundtable too, that's relatable, then go ahead and post them in the forums, and we'll see it later. Well, it's on Test Realm, so some people like to see it on live, right? I'm sure there's a lot of people in chat right now that haven't gotten on Test Realm yet and are eagerly awaiting it for live.
Definitely. I can say that they're in for a treat. I would say most general consensus I've gotten so far is most people really like the world and the new features and the new update. So definitely something to be excited for.
And all this test realm excitement, it's really interesting because y'all guys have been adding, more worlds as time gone, and even if y'all guys take like last year, for example, we had Caramel, but the year before that, y'all guys were tackling like first-time user experience and tackling other different aspects of the game. So it wasn't necessarily just about world creation, but also about trying to focus on different parts of the game. And so going into the world of Lemuria, what is it like? Just from like starting that off from the questing standpoint and trying to build boss fights and mob battles and those kind of like final or significant battles such as dungeons or like the final fight. What's it like building up that experience?
I could start by tackling that. Yeah, I mean it's definitely a big undertaking. I think The hardest part of our entire year is always bringing out the new worlds when we're working on them. You know, it's months in the making and pre-planning months beyond that. But really at the start of it, the biggest thing is it starts with, the script, I would say, and our writers. We have an amazing team of storytellers that work constantly writing scripts, writing the story, revising the story, re-revising the story. And what's cool is the best part is when they kind of start hammering through the script that we all get to sit down and do a read through of the script as just designers. We get to see who the new characters are, how the story's going to unfold. We make notes, suggestions, they revise it again. And that's sort of the blueprint for how we sort of start the characters, the mobs, and all the interactions. From there, we'll start developing what we call a fight list, which is sort of like, how in the story, where are the key points, where there are encounters, where there are mobs. We'll work with writing to come up with, who's in this zone, what's the zone about, what are the characters. I'll try not to give away too many Lumeria spoilers, if possible, right? But I think the lemur's out of the bag. So, what types of lemurs you'd encounter, when you encounter lemurs, where you type other mobs and things like that. And then from there, they'll have those key characters that may not necessarily be bosses, but, usually bosses and important characters are key story points, right? They're either the conclusion of a street, the conclusion of some type of a story, or there might be an NPC who's with the character as well. That's sort of something that's also what we call a key character. And then devising how they behave will sort of determine, how the combat unfolds. What story elements, what abilities they would have, maybe what character we're kind of riffing off of in the real world, right? We like to make our puns and we like to make references to other things.
There's amazing references.
Yeah, I won't give away the Lumeria ones, but there's some heroes from days old that we sort of reference, and so you can kind of think of like, hey, what is the original character this is based on? What abilities do they have, and sort of incorporating that in. And so that's sort of how we build it all out. But yeah, I think the one thing I would say about Lumeria is we've definitely put in a lot more mob diversity in fights than we have in any other world. I think it's the most amount of mobs we've ever made for a world. So there's definitely a good amount there.
And then, certain mobs and bosses as well, like Belloc, for example. We're first introduced to him in Safaria, and then he kind of carries over into Azteca. And, certain characters, they really do stick out, both in terms of, difficulty and story lore. So kind of saying that, or Mallory, for example, how we're introduced to her in Polaris, and then she also plays a role going forward. It's, it's pretty interesting to see how characters kind of move beyond one specific arc or world that they're based in.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to the writers, too. They know they're 5 steps ahead of where we think they are, right? Even as designers, we try to know as much about the lore as possible, but they know what they're planning. All the references and all the things that they're mentioning in this new world, they're thinking about 2-3 worlds ahead and what they plan for that and what they plan for these characters. And some of it, I don't even know, or we don't know till the script comes out, which is even a surprise for us, which I think is really interesting. So something like Mallory, they knew when they created Mallory that they had future plans to push her past Polaris, just as not as a character that's just strictly in that world, and how the story revolves around that. And I think that's awesome. I know it's a lot of work for them, but it's really amazing to see those sort of key elements all tie together and thread through the worlds. Makes really good storytelling, at least I think.
Absolutely.
And so when you start adding in new bosses and mobs like that, or like you said, you guys kind of get more information from the writers about certain characters that are going to stand out. And so when you guys build up that difficulty or try to decide on a spell deck, what really stands out for y'all when you're trying to figure out what points really need to be kind of stronger, or if anything stands out to where this needs to be something that the player's like, okay, this is a little more challenging?
Yeah, so when it comes to, stats and balancing of mobs and things like that, we kind of face it off. We do the new world planning, and we start with the progression of where I usually start with the progression of the player, where we want to progress the player in terms of overall stats, gear stats, what sort of spells, what abilities and powers we're going to give them for the new world, and how they can utilize that against the mobs. From there, mob progression kind of follows suit with how we decide on player progression. We sort of have normal, elite, and then boss level mobs, and sort of we know that, you know, as you level, you know, you gain a little bit of power, even if it's minimal. You know, you get some base health, you get some base shadow pip rating. So, you know, we want to make sure that as, you know, when you are in a zone and you're in a street, we say, hey, we expect you to be about level 144 here, say in this street in Lemuria, you know, then we expect you to be able to handle mobs around that. So we sort of progress them up, sort of as a overall growth curve, and then you know, we make some modifications along the way. I usually start the beginning of a world a little bit easier than the end of the previous world, and then it ramps up to the actual stats, and then eventually pushes to the 150, you know, level ban in this case, and then the final boss usually pushes a little stats a little higher to what we expect the player to be at 150, so that we offer a little bit of stat challenge. And then of course creating those combat encounters and those engagements. I look at, you know, the puzzle of combat. What tools do players have to in their libraries, and what can they use with their decks, their maycasts, their pets, and then how can I utilize some of the cool things they have to help them handle sort of these combat encounters. And that ranges from, you know, choosing the decks of, you know, what the theme of the mob is. You know, are they more an offensive hitting type character, or would they be more helping their team? Or, you know, are they just sort of an all-around character? Are they very ice tank heavy, right? So should I pump up their health and make them really defensive? How would players counter a really defensive, you know, bot style mob, and kind of things like that? And then we just sort of play it out and test it and see, you know, hopefully land where we can find the fun and where players find fun and engaging to overcome those challenges.
And that kind of plays in with the creation of like cheat mechanics as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of players always ask, why do mobs cheat, right? Why are mobs doing things that, you know, I can't do all the time? Well, part of it too is when you look at a standard fight, I mean, it really boils down to action economy, right? We have to,
Right.
sometimes you're just fighting, yeah, and sometimes you're just fighting a boss in one ad, right? But there could be four wizards, and 4 wizards means, you know, four potential power pips, 4 actions each round. So how does a boss who acts on his own with maybe one action per turn, you know, how do they counter that? Well, that's why cheats come in, and they kind of have ways to get around and to counter that kind of stuff, and to make up for the deficit that over time they slowly fall behind. Plus, you know, it's nice to have sort of to break up the mechanics, right? You know, if your tool set is I really like to, you know, spam Legion shields on my team as a support for my you know, my tank wizard, I like to just, I'm really a heavy into tower and Legion shielding my team, and that's sort of my role. You know, and then you go into a fight where you can't really do that. I mean, that means, hey, I'm kind of forced to change up how I think about things, and maybe you find a new or better tactic or a different way to play that you actually find interesting and that you may incorporate into your play style. So that's sort of another element.
Adds more of the element of choice as well, because now you're giving more kind of meaning to what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's not just blade, AoE hit, or blade, one hit, you're done. That definitely has like more factors to the fight, that has more strategizing and trying to break apart just like one standard of playing the game.
Yeah, and I think I'll mention this, and I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, but you know, we got some new spell tech, and you see it in some of the new spells, and we call it a conversion hanging effect. And it's not just, you know, with blades, it's either, right, we either take your blade or we destroy your blade, was sort of previously how that works. Now we have ways to sort of convert blades into other things or adjust value, and I think that, for example, is a nice element we can add, because before it's like sometimes, right, a fight was you blade, we take the blade away, and so you can't blade. Now in some fights, right, we may say, hey, you can blade, but we're actually going to take its value and cut it in half. And that means you can still blade if you like that strategy, but it's not as effective as you think. So we're not fully punishing you, but it's like, hey, you could still keep with your strategy, but it may not be as optimal as you think. So, you know, it's up to you. Do you want to try to push through and keep blading at that half value, or is there some other strategy you could see yourself taking out? And I think that sort of is a nice element we've added to the new world and some of the new spells.
Yeah, I can definitely say I really like the element. It gives a new dynamic to the game, and I won't spoil anything, but I definitely failed a fight 3 times in the new world because of a cheat that a boss had. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. I think it adds a new layer to the game that's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's actually a big discussion we've been having. And Artie, I think Artie, this is a good time for you to chime in. One of the things we want to talk about in the planning for PvE, especially for next year, is what does failure look like, right? What does what is, because in our game right now in PvE, I think the failure is kind of, aside from bosses, it's it's not really as much of a thing as we think, right? Players can load 7-8 card decks in PvE and be fine, and not even have to worry about quote unquote failure. So we've been having big discussions of like, what does it mean to be defeated or to lose a fight, and how can we make meaningful choices to the player without them feeling like they've lost out? And Artie, I know you have many comments on that, but feel free to chime
yeah.
in.
Well, that is part of it. It's like at the end of when I was running through all the choices in the dev diary, it was like at the end, at the culmination of these decisions, not only in terms of gear, deck, spell setup, but also in terms of combat strategy and execution. In order for these choices to mean anything, there has to be some consequence if you failed at it. And it's not always, you can deck fail. I mean, that's the nature of card games, is basically, and that is part of the skill in deck construction, is influencing probability of pulling what you need when you need it. And so, yeah, Matt and I were going back and forth just about like, do we need to look at what does failure actually mean? Does when we consider failure, is it actually losing the fight and having to come back, or do we want to look at it in a more nuanced way where it's like, oh, the combat could have taken 6 rounds, but now since I quote failed, it's going to take me 9 rounds or 10 rounds as opposed to so then it becomes a time penalty or something like that. So we're kind of looking at that's sort of that is part of the conversation, right? It's like, with no consequences or there's no the decisions start to lose meaning, because it doesn't matter what I choose, the result is always the same. So we need to have a variety of potential outcomes in order to kind of give meaning to the decisions you've made in terms of pets, jewels, gear, spells, when I cast this, when I cast that, who am I grouping with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In order for these decisions to have any gravity, there has to be some result that is either desirable, like or not. And so, yeah, like I said, it's just I want to be able. I don't want to leave any stone unturned. So we I want to have conversations about all the things, and then some things might not change. Right? We'll look at it. We'll say like, what works fine as it is, and we'll move on. But I want to at least have a conversation about those things. I don't want to pass things over just assuming that they're the best for the game as it is now.
And just for the players, a note on what we consider failure too. We want to make sure that failure is also palatable to the player, right? We don't want to punish the player to punish the player. Even failure can be a rewarding experience, and we want to find that threshold, right? We obviously, especially in PvE, our job is to not punish players. We want players to have an engaging, and we want them to have an engaging, story-driven experience, with both alone, and they can have it with friends. I always recommend, with friends. It's always more fun with friends. But we want them to have those engaging, rewarding experiences, but we also want them to feel like they're making meaningful choices. And so that's the big debate we always have with PvE. And failure is just one of the, like Artie said, one of the many stones we're turning over. But obviously, failure doesn't always feel good, so we want to make sure we're not punishing you for the other reason. We don't have a backwards effect. So it's a deeper level debate, but we're constantly thinking about it.
Right, and that's the difficulty with adding in, or trying to balance different things and adding in new mechanics and new utility. It's not to make everything seem like it's, nerfing for the player, because obviously you don't want to say, alright, we're slashing these stats, we're slashing this, we're going to take health away from this. What y'all guys trying to do is, add that balancing to where, it's not just this very kind of like black and white style playing. Either you do it or you don't, you hit at all or you don't, or you use a pet or you don't, or you have this gear or you don't. It's adding more decision making, more strategy planning to really have a more engaging experience with the game. And so that's where that balancing comes in. It's kind of, difficult planning out new gear for y'all guys that players really do seem appealing. And, it's not to try to take away from that, but to add more of a balancing effect where it's more engaging, it's more challenging, but we're not nerfing it.
Yeah, right. I mean,
exactly.
and also, and Matt touched on it, and it's something else mentioned in the dev notes where, there's a sizable amount of people who enjoy the experience for what it is right now. You know, they really like the story. They like exploring the worlds and having occasional challenges at certain key points within the main line. So we don't want to do anything to we don't want to alienate those people. I mean, if they, so it's about agency, right? The player should have some choices with how they want to engage the content. And if they want to engage it for the story and the experience and sort of the exploration aspect of it, they should be able to do that. And then for those who want to maybe have a more challenged experience and a more nuanced or textured sort of experience, they should have that opportunity. And that's where that's another portion of where your choice comes in. I can choose to do side content or not. I can choose to deal with normal encounters, combat encounters, or I can choose to engage in something a bit more challenging. And so, anyway, it's all just about giving players opportunities to choose and sort of gravitate to what they find entertaining.
And why, and it sort of answers the questions a lot of players ask about, side content versus mainline, right? A lot of people, will give feedback and say, hey, that was this mainline was kind of easy. And the answer is, yeah, we're okay with that. We have some key moments where there are challenging points in the story, but we try not to make these impossible hurdles. And right now, our policies, our philosophy has been to reserve challenge and maybe mandatory group content. Like, you really can't solo this unless you're min-maxed. That's mainly for optional sort of side content, because we consider side content to be optional, right? You don't have to play the optional content, the side content, to get to top level, to get to max level, right? You just playing through the story will get you the experience you need. So there, there's no reason to have to worry if you hold off or you need to get a group or wait to complete sort of a side challenge. But that doesn't mean that's always going to be the case. Like Artie mentioned, some people would like to play through the story while having a more challenging experience, and I think part of our next year goal and plan is to sort of explore that idea and see how we can deliver that in a meaningful manner and obviously in a timely manner. I know obviously players have always said, well, I want hard mode, right? I want epic mode, I want insane mode,
right? And all the levels of difficulty.
Yeah, and levels of difficulty, that's definitely something we could explore. But it's the thing is, as designers, we have to be cognizant of if I'm making an easy, a medium, and a hard version of a fight, I'm making 3 fights, right? You have to think about it that way too.
Right. It's the same boss, same mobs, but that spell deck, the strategy, and even cheats, like, that's all completely different at each tier.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of see that if you kind of look at gauntlets that are level banded, right? Sort of some cheats carry over to the next level band up, and some in the decks change. What I'm doing is, right, it's creating different decks, creating even different AI logics, and it's not just about pumping or pumping up or down stats, because again, that doesn't always make the rewarding experience you want. Like, if you're just losing a fight due to the same mechanics, it's just I've pumped up stats. That doesn't necessarily reward those who want to challenge in a way they may always think. So we want to do it in a more creative way. Now, obviously, pumping stats is something we'll probably do a little bit along the way, but also, like I said, different thinking, different decks, different cheats. But that also means different play experiences and designers having to create almost different fights for the same fight. So we're thinking about ways we can do that aren't just a blanket. Okay, here it's now does 3 times as much damage, good luck, and you're just losing because the numbers are just too high. That's
right.
Also not what we want to see either. But yeah, good.
And that's kind of why you guys added in the new, like, damage stat intersection point, to where your resist doesn't become to where you're immortal to all attacks, or damage doesn't become to the point where it's like all that matters, adding more damage to the point you're at like 250, 260, 270%, and you're like, how much damage do I really have? Well, it's more than I needed here, so now I need this here. And so that's kind of where that intersection point came in, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mix. You know, it was originally something I've always been talking. I've always been saying cap stats or soft cap stats for PvP. You know, because I think, and I think we started sort of exploring that idea, and I know Ratbeard could definitely mention it more. We've had many discussions about that, but my answer is right. As designers, we could say, you know, I never want a player to have 200% resist as a stat. Okay, you know, well, the first answer is designers will just never give out enough points to get there. But if the ability, I always find that if the ability is there, if you could just make gear that lets you get there, you eventually get there somehow. You know, somebody somebody hops in, design philosophy changes. So my answer is, well, if you don't want them to get to 200%, at the very least, make sure that if they ever get to 200%, it stops, or whatever number you want to land it on. And soft caps are kind of a way to do that, where we saw players damage and players resist were kind of running away, but we obviously had to create, you know, we want to create more powerful gear or things to replace you. You know, we want you to replace that Darkmoor gear, and you just won't. You won't do it. And, you know, we don't, but we also don't want to just nerf it, because obviously that's the quick and dirty solution, and it's mean. But so with the intersections, right, players now can say, hey, I can still kind of grow my resist and grow my damage, but I'm sort of past the potential that the designers wanted me to. So I can still grow it, but I'm definitely paying more of a cost. And that's still giving you choice, but it's also kind of forcing you out of that behavior in a nice way. So the hope is that you say, you know what, my damage is good. I don't want to spend 3 points of damage to get actually 1 point of it actually back. So I might want to start looking at other stats and things like that. Because especially in PvE, I mean, let's look at PvE, right? You have more than enough damage. You definitely have way more than enough damage than you need.
Oh
and
yeah, 1 in a million.
Yeah, 1 in a million. But also, like, if we made higher damage gear, you'd want it, but you wouldn't need it, right? If I just added 10% more damage, you guys would be like, oh my god, I need that gear. But also, you don't need it. You don't actually, you think you need it, but obviously,
you don't.
You could survive without it, and you can win combats you know, you could have your 100%, 95% win rate, and the 10% may not even matter with the health of the mobs. You know?
Right, so. You know, it's like we go from Olympus gear, and now we get the Hades gear, and now we're at Darkmoor gear, and now we're like, okay, 20 levels. Oh, Dragoon gear, now we gotta craft that. So that's kind of adding more life to just not looking at everything so simple-minded.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we're very cognizant of the level of effort to get gear, right? And people are like, when, you know, a lot of people are in that debate, like, when can I replace my Catacombs gear? And so, you know, we're approaching, you know, you can kind of see that with Lumeria, we're starting to approach that. But, you know, people worked really hard, and there was a bit of a grind, you know, let's be fair. So we want to make sure that people felt that once they got the gear, that they can hold on to it and use it long enough to feel like it was worth it, right? If you just grind out gear, you complete your set, and then say 6 months later, a new world comes out and your gear is completely gone. Some players, you know, are like, well, why did I spend all that time? And then it may actually turn them off from chasing the next set of gear, because they're like, well, in 6 months, the next gear's there. And then you know, we want to make sure that players feel like they have enough time with those top end sets to feel like it was worth the effort, and that they will, you know, enjoy it. And then even then you may feel like, hey, I can still keep some pieces of Catacombs and be comparable to this other grind. So, you know, make sure that players feel, again, rewarded for their time spent, especially if it's Catacombs, right? I admit, you know, Catacombs was you know, a bit more grindy than not then to the players' expectations. I expected it and designed it to be a little bit grindier than usual, but it was worth it, right? You got your almost 2 years,
right,
1.5, 2 years worth of holding. Yeah, and now your new upgrades are coming out, so it's time to say, is it time to move on? And we feel like the answer is yes. Everybody says in the chat, Sky Iron Hosta nerf. I say Sky Iron Hosta buff. Let's get another 100 levels. Another 100 levels.
Let's go with that.
There you go.
But I really do like seeing different things like that, because obviously, you know, stats were going up, and it was just like, you know, new robe, new hat, new boots, new wand, and then, you know, here we go, new gear, and so everyone was kind of, you know, just stuck on, you know, you have your gear sets, which there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody knows, you know, Darkmoor's a big deal, the Olympus gear's a big deal, the Hades gear's a big deal, and then, you know, Dragoon is a big deal. But then how do you approach that to an extent to where it's not just, you know, that, you know, just that thing in name where it's just, you know, you have to have it or you need it. And so, you know, breaking part, how do you get to it, like you were saying, with it being more of a grindier experience, like incorporating crafting and farming at the same time to get to that. and then it was a decent reward in return. And then, as you said, now we were kind of moving on past that gear. Trying to determine that pacing is definitely something that obviously looks difficult, and with those changes like the stat intersection for damage and resist, that kind of lets you keep making new gear and keep adding in more stuff that people are going to want without it seeming overpowered and without having to nerf the existing gear. Y'all didn't take away, stats from Darkmoor gear. Y'all didn't take away stats from this, but y'all guys added, okay, here's a point where it's going to kind of cut off, and now you kind of got your weakening point here, and then eventually it's going to stop here. So I really like the incorporation of that mechanic.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of that comes out of play. Sorry, a lot of that just comes real quick. Comes from player feedback too. We know players are like, "Hey, I've run this 10 times. I've run this 15 times. Haven't got a piece of gear I needed," and that's sort of where the crafting came out of. We want to make sure to ensure we know at the very worst possible case how many runs it's going to take you to at least craft the set of stats you want. And even with Lumeria, you'll see that, right? We are making the crafting sets that are the same stats as the grind, that are the drop grind set. And the point is that, hey, you could farm these bosses and at least you know your minimum run count to get a full set, and you're not running 200-300 while your friend just got lucky on his third run and has 2 pieces already, kind of stuff like that.
Yeah. So I had a question about the damage intersection actually. Do you plan on raising it at any point? And if no, like how do you prevent increasing gear from getting like discouraging from people getting new gear?
Yeah, I mean, so for PvE, I would say, we're going to have to raise the cap. I was looking at basically the cap actually being your level, right? At the intersection, if you're level 150, the intersection starts at 150. If you're level 160, the intersection starts at 160. So there's a 10% gain that we could easily keep up. But obviously, we have to maintain our numbers and be aware of our numbers. And, there are things that may help or may not help, right? But for PvP, though, you definitely that will be a Ratbeard question. But again, this is a PvE roundtable. But like we could increase stats and not increase your damage, right? Like for example, if health is going up and other stats are going up, and let's say the next set of gear just doesn't have more damage, you might think, well, okay, what do we do? But then you may notice, well, mob health isn't going up, which means my damage output has not changed, but I'm still able to defeat mobs. But hey, mobs are actually hitting me harder, so I need health, I need resist, I need other stats. So we have tools to maybe obviously allow gear to get better, but we may not, the result isn't always just pumping up the numbers. And now I'm all for, players feeling more powerful and gaining more power, but, we also have to make sure that, our numbers don't run away from us, because we are increasing damage at a percentage value, and you can keep pace. But like my joke always is that sometimes you feel like, hey, I'm gonna do a nice hit, but like, man, I might do 8,000 or 17,000 damage. I'm somewhere between there. If you're trying to calculate blades and damage in your head, you're like, I don't know where this is gonna land. We don't want that. We don't want 17,000 to become 170,000, or we just, because eventually in your head, the more zeros, the harder it gets for just on the turn fly to try to really bring those numbers in your head. So I'm always trying to keep the numbers as tight and controlled. But yeah, we're not adverse to the damage intersection cap, adjusting and moving based on our needs. We're not just gonna say it's always 150, and then by level 180 you're just getting almost nothing per damage point. We would never let that happen.
Absolutely, that makes sense.
And so, with that, did y'all guys ever, because I mean, y'all guys have been around with KingsIsle for, some time now, did y'all guys ever think that the game would get as far as it did, or be like level 140, 150, 160, and then I believe it was Falmea or Ratbeard that actually mentioned that y'all guys already were thinking about level 200 and beyond, what that's going to be like?
I think Artie, since you're a original OG, you could definitely comment on that. He's an OG designer,
OG.
Original OG
That's
designer.
Right. Originally, Dragonspire was designed to be the raid world because we didn't think we would go beyond Dragonspire. And that's why there's like a lot of doors, and that's informed a lot of the world building part of it, because what we expected was we would just add gauntlets and other content just at Dragonspire. So we weren't sure what was going to happen, but I mean, coming out of beta, it was pretty obvious where we were headed. Now how long that goes, it's like, who knows? I mean, the game's doing great, so I have no reason to think that it's going to end anytime soon. So yeah, I'm planning for level 200.
Yep. I would say, I mean, so I joined KingsIsle in 2014, and at the time it was the start of Darkmoor Dungeon, and so I was, making some of the combat stuffs with Brandon. He did a lot of the fights back then while I was getting trained up, and yeah, I remember looking at the progression charts of stats and the gear and sort of being like, oh yeah, we need to figure this out, because we only got 30 more levels before this numbers start to break down or get so crazy that players would be like, what's happening here? I saw like simple stuff like experience. The experience was getting more and more, and I don't think, I'm sure you've noticed now that I've just sort of capped experience so that like every level is 1.25 million. Because by now, if I just kept the growth potential of experience gain, it was going to be, you guys were getting like, I think it was like 600, you'd be at 600 million XP a level right now. So I was like, yeah, we should probably fix that. Sort of, so we always think, we always think now when we plan for the future. We try to design our stat progressions to grow infinitely. That doesn't mean that that's what they're going to be. It just means that I like to say as a systems designer, design to as many levels as you can till you find the point where your numbers break and mark it, and if try to fix that, right? Because sometimes numbers are great, but they'll break at level 300 or they'll break at level 1000, and I've seen it. I've worked on other MMOs before, and people said, oh, we'll never get to level 300, and now they're at level 300. But I would say like Shadow Pip rating, for example, is the new rating system, and I have it right now. I have it progressed out to level 250, right? That's not level 250 confirmed, go crazy players. It just means, I've planned it so that, can it work to level 250? The answer is yes. Can it work to level 500? Yes. Now that doesn't mean we're not going to go back and adjust it and maybe change, something in the system, but, we think that way. We always think for the next 10 years because we expect to be working on it the next 10 years.
Yeah. And some of it is why we're having this discussion now, right? Because there were decisions made at the beginning that, weren't anticipating the longevity of the game, and so it's worthwhile for us to look at some of these core systems and sort of try to understand original intent and then make adjustments, either to generally modernize them in a quality of life way, or reimagine them in a way that makes it so that growth is easier. That's part of what the Rochambeau was attempting to do in PvP, is create more design space, create more diversity of builds and play styles and things like that, because then it's far easier for us to kind of grow. Like, we don't have to focus too much on damage output, not necessarily, like, because there's a lot of other things at play, or like there may be more choices and decisions to make in terms of gear diversity based on how you might, or how you choose to develop your wizard and things like that. So because I audit different portions of the economy periodically when I have the time, and so I have to do that often, and it's relevant to the grinding discussion, and it's also relevant to just general acquisition, is trying to normalize effort or value that each of these things have, so that players have, and I mention it in the dev notes, players have some agency to decide how they want to engage in the game to get what they want, and give them some options. But then all the options should have parity in terms of their value or effort to acquire. You might decide you prefer engaging in the events, or you prefer grinding on a boss, or you prefer engaging in pets and gardening. And not everything will come from everywhere, but the sources, the faucets of these different things, there should be a number of different ways that you can kind of pursue what you want. And then we should try to make them economically equitable. Otherwise, there's no choice, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's no choice in terms of grinding for gold, or, well, not limited choice. It's not as easy as that. But there is a right way. And so what we want to do is try to make the game, and that means revisiting some of these systems, because we did make a lot of economic decisions early to try to protect the economy. And some of that, some of it works, and then some of it just needs to be reevaluated.
Yeah. And I think when we think about, when it comes to those types of decisions for options, right? When it comes to, especially for an MMO and things that involve repetition or a little bit of grind, people try to aim for the path of least resistance. But and I always use the example, right? Like King Detritus for Catacombs is what I call the path of least resistance. I originally wanted players to be able to choose the boss they wanted and to sort of get the drop rates based on, which boss they like to encounter, which one, win rates, things like that. But when it boiled down to it, it's just King Detritus ended up being the fastest turnaround possible, and it was one of the front-loaded bosses, so it was very easy for people to get in without having to run all the catacombs and to grind that up a lot quicker to get sort of what they wanted. Or Grizzleheim for farming gold, for example, is another thing. Like
Right.
when there's an obvious better choice, hands down, then you lose that choice. It's like, well, if I wanted gold, what if I wanted to use gardening as a way to earn gold?
Right.
Well, yes, you could, but it's not as good as Grizzleheim, so why would you do that? And so we have discussions as to why can't we allow players to play the way they want to play to get a lot of what they want.
Yeah,
Right.
and the problem is with that inequity, we can introduce a new option, but the players won't perceive it as one. And I mentioned that too. Like, just because we have X number of options to acquire a thing, if one is clearly better, then you don't have X options, you have one option. And so that's why we have to normalize these things so that the players feel as if they have a choice and they're not feeling like they've made the wrong decision to go this way versus that way to kind of get what they want.
Right, when you have so many different ways you can do things, like gold, for example, why would you go for something else versus that, like, one main thing? You could have 1,000 different ways of doing something, but if one thing is better, then that's obviously what everybody's going to flock to. And so, definitely, I really do get what you guys are saying about that, trying to expand more across that. So it's not just, one single thing. You have options, you have more engagement, so it doesn't necessarily feel like it's like something is being nerfed, but more like we're just trying to get, expansion to that.
Right, and that's the and that's also some of the trickery with it, or the difficulty with it, is we're attempting to normalize these things, or we're attempting to put in opportunities for choices and player agency, which will lead to a more enjoyable experience. In some cases, that means something that was profitable won't be as profitable. It tends to we try to have that be the last resort, but it has to happen. If it has to happen,
Right.
It has to happen for the greater good, right? So,
Right.
we just have to approach it that way, where the player's day-to-day experience or moment-to-moment experience will be better if they feel like they can engage the game in the way they enjoy the most to get the things that they want. And so,
Right, so it's not like, we have like gold caps of like 500,000, you can keep going 600,000, 700,000 one day, but it's like, how does that reflect on things you buy? Is, like housing items, is gear, is that going to be like 200, 300, 400,000 just for, one single thing? There has to be some kind of balancing element to that.
Yeah, and that's why we originally put the wallet cap in there, and then had the bazaar instead of an auction house, because again, it ends up being something where the more people we can have engaged in the player economy, the more the healthier the player economy is. And so what we were trying to protect the economy for those people coming in afterwards. And I worked on Ultima Online, so I also knew that if something happens that breaks the economy, it is forever broken. And
Yep.
so and you never know exactly what that might end up being, because the whole MMO is very complex kind of beast. And so but we wanted to make sure we preserved sort of an economic experience, just like anything, like the game experience and other things. We didn't want that inflationary impact to kind of ruin the experience of the newer users, and so that's kind of what we've done. Now, the issue is just, I mean, the economy is pretty massive, and so it becomes difficult to do it we don't want to do it too quickly anyway. But
Right.
then it'll take some time to kind of get everything sorted out.
And that, and looking at that as well, because it's like I said, you don't want to nerf anything. It's obviously just trying to get more engagement out of whatever it is. And like in terms of balancing, like with the spell audit, for example, there were some changes you guys did with spells, and people were like, oh no.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, moving on to spells, I mean, when we did the spell audit, it was sort of, right, we needed to get spells into a pool, not just for PvE, but obviously for PvP as well, but there were spells that just were not being calculated properly based on their value. And we just needed to do it, which means some spells actually went up and some spells went down. It wasn't anything personal. It wasn't like we had these, huge debates. We had a rule set and we're following, because part of it too is, players would ask, why is my spell this? And, why is fire spell this and storm spells this and getting this? And, shouldn't myth be this? And the answer is like, yeah, it should be. And so we didn't want to make sure like, one school got more power because of just a number calculation.
Right. And then that goes back... And that goes into that difficulty as well, because you have the different schools. Life is known for healing, ice is known for tanking, fire and storm known for damage. Balance kind of combines a little bit of everything, and so that's obviously very challenging in terms of PvE. It's like, okay, well, if this one school is this strong in all these topics, then why not just play him and no one else? Or PvP, for example, because the schools are so different, that's its own little challenge. And so one of the hardest things that I know players are really concerned is, how does PvP and PvE kind of correlate together? And so, because we've had the spell audit and people are like, oh no, these spells are nerfed, why use this spell? But then when you guys look, you guys also changed health of the mobs as well to kind of balance that out a little bit, to show we're not nerfing, we're balancing.
Yeah, I mean, part of it too is our goal is to try to, and Ratbeard and Artie will talk more on this too, but we don't want to just make these two separate bubbles between PvE and PvP. We want them to be a more fluid experience, so that players who engage in PvE can sort of bring their stuff over into PvP, and it's not a complete dichotomy between them. What that means is we have to make sure that things are balanced from the foundational point for both sides of things. And when it comes to PvE, it's something I know players don't like to see, but if we do a rebalancing and it does result in player power reduction of any kind, right? The mobs, we can compensate. We will always compensate the mobs for that. If we see that all players are going to lose 5% damage, and that's just something that's going to happen, we're going to make sure every single mob in the game is factoring in that 5% reduction. We would never just say, hey, you're all getting weaker, the entire PvE experience just got hard. We'll never do that. That's why we adjusted mob health, we adjusted mob damage, things like that. Ratings, when we switched over ratings and crit system, we made sure mobs were tied into that, so that players weren't feeling like they just crit changed so drastically that your 2x isn't always 2x anymore, and we had to make sure that mobs counted for that lack of 2x. We make sure that we don't destroy what you've experienced. It should feel like, hey, sure, my numbers got a little less, but combat feels the same, right? And my win rate's the same, and my round timers are the same, and sort of that's what we try to encapsulate. So any adjustments we make in any balance goes through making sure that the PvE experience is still what it was before, and if we do change it, it's for the better, or it's for the goals we need. But we'll never try to drastically just make it harder and worse for no reason. We would never do that to the players, and we wouldn't want to do that to anybody.
Right. And I really like how y'all tackled that, because it wasn't a nerf. People are like, okay, it's not going to be this much, but when you look at it, gear didn't change. The spells, they changed a little bit, but so did health mob. It's all kind of balancing when you look from that kind of overviewed perspective of just kind of factoring everything.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up on what Matt was saying, is that we want to bring the PvP and PvE experience closer together, because you know, when we started looking at PvP, or when I started looking at maybe 3 months ago or whatever, it was very separated, even internally, right? It was like, you know, don't mess with PvE, or you know, we got to do this for PvP and blah 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 blah. And I was like, we need to kind of see what we can do to bring everything together, so we're focusing on the core combat system, because ideally, I mean, in an ideal situation, really, a smart mob should play like a player. And so if I'm playing the smartest mob with the best deck we can construct, it should be, I mean, you know, you aspire to that, but it should play as well as a person. And so my experience I'm having in the most challenging PvE experience should begin to inform the PvP experience if these experiences are aligned with one another. And so right now, the barrier to entry, or in Fourth Age, the barrier to entry in PvP was so big because it just had, it barely resembled PvE at all. So if you weren't willing to go through that crucible, you would never be a long-time PvPer. And so what we want to try to do is bring that together somewhat, so that the barrier to entry isn't as dramatic. And then, you know, you might find more people from PvE engaging in PvP, you know, in between content releases and things like that. And at least they'll understand what's going on, and they can make intelligent decisions. You know, they may not get to the top, because it's still going to be it's still a game of
right.
nuance.
It's still its own thing.
Yeah, but they can at least feel competent moving into PvP, which is, I dare to say, was not the case in Fourth Age, at least.
And I think that kind of tapers to what we're also thinking about when he mentioned about like mobs and informed, you know, decisions for mobs. A mob, you know, hard, challenging fights should feel like you're, you know, when you're fighting a mob, feels like something, you know, that if you were controlling the mob, or a smart player would be doing. And, you know, we are aware, you know, where mobs will make some very, very silly decisions in combat, and, you know, improving that as a whole throughout the year. You know, mob AI is it's a complex creature. You know, it's, if anybody's ever worked with AI stuff, it's, you know, the amount you have to get it to recognize and logic, you know, there's a lot there. But the goal, you know, is we want to start making mobs a lot smarter and making a lot better decisions in combat. Now that doesn't mean the PvE experience is just magically going to get harder, right? It's the same thing like I've said before.
Right.
You know, but you know, when a mob heals himself on turn 1 with full health, right? That doesn't reward it, right? That doesn't feel, right? That just feels like a bug, right? And so things like that, we need to make sure that, you know, a mob, you know, that is considered a challenging mob will make more decisions that challenges the player for that intention. Because I'd rather, you know, not just pump, like I said, I don't want to just pump up stats because, you know, hey, this mob isn't that smart, so he's got to hit 3 times as hard. It's like, no, like he's gonna choose his hits precisely, so that it's the same difficulty, but it feels like a better thing. And then because it's like, oh, I'm getting used to how this AI works and it's a lot clever and it plays more like a player. Like Artie said, if you then go into PvP, you might, or you try PvP, you might say, hey, you know, this feels like this fight, you know, where this player is acting in the same sort of manner as this fight. I kind of get a sense of how to counter these things. And I know players ask, you know, we talked about like the Rochambeau going into PvP. People are like, hey, we like Rochambeau, I want these spells for PvE. And, you know, why are they PvP only? And, you know, it's a twofold factor. It's one, we want to make sure that obviously we fine tune them to be exactly where we want them to land, especially for the PvP experience. Part of it too is that mob AI, right? Like if I just gave you all these Rochambeau spells in PvE, you wouldn't need them, right? Because mobs don't triple stack blades, they don't triple stack stuff unless there's combat triggers. They're not going to know how to Rochambeau or Gambit you back. They're not going to know any of that stuff yet, because they just don't have that AI logic yet. And so we want to make sure that first of all we fine tune that entire foundation of the system to get it to where we want, and then hopefully, right, if we see it working in PvE, we can then say, let's bring it over and make sure that now mob decks now contain it, so that that whole system can now come into the PvE experience and give players sort of more interesting ways to enjoy the game. And again, this isn't to make the game harder. but to give them more choices and to give them different strategies and to try new things, other than blade AoE hit, right? Like, let's be honest.
Right.
And we
that's
want more to that.
Yeah, and that's that's another reason why we were settling into PvP first, is because we're attempting to shift kind of the synergistic dynamics of the entire kind of spell library, but it all layers on top of an existing library. And some of that works with what we are doing, which is trying to strengthen school identity through strengths and weaknesses, and some of it doesn't. And so or it may not, right? It takes a while to see kind of the results of introducing these things. It takes a while for the community to first of all create sort of the dominant meta, and then it takes the community time to tech solutions to that dominant meta. And so it takes time for all of that to mature and develop. And even if we, like Matt mentioned, even if we were to give them all these spells, there's, people are running with 7 to 10 card decks. There's no space for it. There's no need for it. They already burn through trash mobs in 4 rounds or whatever, and it's
turn one, baby, hit all turn one.
And it's just like over and over and over again. Yeah. And what and then I'll stop talking about this. But one of the things I was talking about with Ratbeard was, like, I was reading about it. And I was experiencing it myself. Is kind of like the decision matrix, or my choices begin to collapse pretty rapidly in PvE, to where I wasn't feeling good about most of the choices I was making in terms of playing cards in PvE. And yet it's and these are sort of the non-instance combats, non-instance encounters. And what had been happening is kind of adjusting quest content to minimize its involvement, and then trying to find ways to accelerate the conclusion of these things. And I felt like that we should start by kind of begging the question of the role these combats have in the overall questing experience. We make giant zones. We create Matt creates all these mobs and all this stuff. And so we're trying to help players get through it faster. They want to get through it as fast as possible, and it just kind of felt like, let's take a second. Is this really, what we want to do?
Right.
Or should we instead look to try to make these things more enjoyable in themselves?
Right. I kind of look at that. I say it's kind of like that test realm effect, where obviously, we need players to go through, test everything, make sure it's all bug free. So y'all guys want players to go, from start to finish in test realm. But then it's like, we've waited for a new world, and then, 12 hours later, we're done.
Right. Well, and that was another comment that Ratbeard had from one of his streams, which was, he was asking the question, what are you guys in a rush for? But then he was in a rush, and then that's when I started thinking about it systemically. Is the way the game is designed now encouraging you to rush everywhere? Teleporters, mount speeds, more teleportation options, no deck failure, all this stuff. Are we then just telling people go faster? But for what purpose? We take, like Matt mentioned early, like the writing's plotted out stuff way beyond what we imagine. But they start planning a world. It takes a year to put a world together. And so we take a whole year. Yeah, and then like you said, people blaze through it, but what's the rush? What's the rush? Is it, And so anyway, that's when I was like, let's take a step back and kind of like look at what maybe are some fundamental problems with our reward cycle or progression or core combat, and then identify these weak points to try to make the moment to moment a lot more compelling, interesting, and more fun. And so, if we communicate through our system design and our content design a slower pace, a more deliberate pace, or whatever, I would expect a portion of the players at least to kind of meet that beat, right? They're not going to be so in a hurry, but I feel like we're sort of subliminally encouraging people to hurry. They don't need to hurry, right? Wizards
Right.
certainly not about hurrying. I mean, turn-based card game is not about speed. I mean, that was part of what I was attempting to do in Beast Moon was, you know, how much can time be a factor? How much can we accelerate the combat rounds and accelerate the completion of combats? And what does that feel like? How does that work? And so, but the normal playthroughs are, you know. So anyway, that was kind of some of the thought processes and internal discussions about this.
All right. I just saw someone post in chat saying, "Don't touch teleporters. I'm not going back." It's like I feel you.
Well-
I remember Colossus before the teleporters back in Wizard City, going through to the final castle.
Yeah, and like I said, it's leaving no stone unturned. It doesn't mean things are going to change. It's just we need to look at them, and we need to say like you know, what's the advantages and disadvantages of having this or that, these travel saving mechanisms, or kind of all these different things. Because the players will push for these things sometimes, and it may not always be the best thing. It may not always lead to a better experience.
Yeah, and we're not talking about, you know, I'm always cognizant of time versus quality of experience, right? I will never just add, you know, I've worked on MMOs for years, and it's like sometimes you're told to design for time, but that's never fun. If something is just meant to, like a dungeon shouldn't just be designed to take an hour. That's not a rewarding experience. The goal is to, you know, I'd rather have a 30-minute rewarding experience than a 1 hour boring experience. I think most people want to feel like their time's worth it. But like people have mentioned in chat, right? You know, and our story is really, really good, but as at times, you know, as Artie said, trash mobs and some of the encounters, they feel like they're just blockers between the story. And they feel like they're in the way, in some cases, as opposed to being part of the story and part of the experience. And so we as designers are trying to figure out, you know, how can we make this trash fight feel rewarding enough that you kind of forget that, yeah, you're going to get your next story point after this, and you're not just rushing to get to the next side of the story and ignoring what we're trying to, you know, have you enjoy as well. And so that's the ongoing debate we have.
No, I really like that. Greyhorn Mercenaries Zafaria.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that spurred. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you noticed the kill and collects from Polaris and beyond,
I asked them guys.
You don't kill 12 of anything really anymore, right? And we learned from the Greyhorns was sort of our
right.
I think it was the main point. Is like we always say, don't let it be the Greyhorn. It's the same thing as like collect this one item at a 10% drop rate, right? Well, you can't collect these 10 items at 100. Done. Like, you know, just get it so players see the end in sight, and then it's not necessarily this person got it on their first try. This person's here for 15 more fights. We don't, you know, that's another sort of struggle players will feel behind. But we want to make sure they see that road.
Yeah, and you know, we don't want to necessarily design to a time, but we want to be mindful of the time. Players are mindful of their own time. So like, you know, if they don't know whether a dungeon's going to take 30 minutes or 2 hours, how are they supposed to be able to plan playing the dungeon in their own life? You know, so we have to be mindful about acquisition, travel times, completion times. You know, but then we also need to be careful about like, what is the game telling the player? What's the message? You know, so like if trash combats were fun, if people enjoyed them and they were different as you progressed, you know, from level 50 combat is sort of mechanically different than a level 70, which, you know, it kind of is with we introduce various different combat mechanics, and it kind of makes it different. You know, yeah, would they then mind some sort of higher kill rates or whatever if they're enjoying it, if they're fun and they find it rewarding? You know, would they mind? But, you know, like I said, the way we're moving into it is we don't want to alienate the people who enjoy the way it is now. So we're finding ways of creating experiences for folks who are maybe looking for something, yeah, like I said, a bit more textured or a bit more
engagement.
A bit more engaging.
Because obviously you don't want, you know, all PvE players to say, well, I'm done with this, let's all go to PvP, and vice versa. You know, you want, you know, people to have choice and be able to have fun in as many environments, even if it's not their ideal environment, but also have everyone have their own ideal environment that they can succeed in.
Yeah.
Right.
part of it too is like if everybody just rushes to the end of the content, what happens? If everybody's done right away and they feel like they rushed and they're done with PvE, well, what happens 2 months later when somebody enters, the new world for the first time, and they're like, hey, does anybody want to hang out? And they're like, yeah, I did that like 2 months ago. Bye. Like, we don't want, we want players to feel like they can go back and re-engage, or that other players are able to feel like pacing themselves is not a loss. Go at your own pace, enjoy the game at your own pace, and we'll kind of guide you along that path and kind of try to keep you on track so you don't get, too overwhelmed. I know we kind of went over a bit, but do you want to click through and do some of the spell stuff? I know we have that big Spellements highlighted,
Right.
and figure we handle that real quick and then.
Right.
Yeah, that'll be a quick one.
Yeah,
So-
just like that.
Yeah, just real
We'll
quick.
talk for days, us.
All right, and I'm always interested in y'all guys' input, even if we do get a little off topic. It's always cool talking to y'all guys' perspective because y'all are players as well, but y'all are literally behind the game as well. So it's really cool just talking with y'all no matter what.
Yeah, it's fun being here. It's fun to talk about.
But going into spells, obviously one of the biggest controversial things, and it's this very weird love-hate relationship that I can't explain, and I see it as an absolute win, I really do. But a lot of people, they really want abilities to upgrade their spells, but at the same time they're against that because it doesn't feel right. And so spell elements to me is good because, for example, you get spell drops from Lore Master, for example. Well, you got, a couple dozen spells from Lore Master, but how do you know, when you're making progress on those spells, how do you know what you're going to get? And spell elements kind of adds progression to spells, whether you're upgrading or farming. And then we've seen other bosses starting to drop more spell elements as well, like Ratatosser Spin, I believe, is now droppable from a different boss as well in Grizzleheim. And so, looking at spell elements, it's this whole path to upgrade spells and to make them more usable, kind of add more opportunity to actually use these spells again and farm for other spells. Just overall, what is the general concept of spell elements, and what are some ways you guys have been tackling the topic? Because y'all guys have, I'm sure, received a lot of feedback concerned about where spell elements are going.
Sure, I mean, I can start with that, and then Artie, you can talk about where spell elements are going. But yeah, so I've always viewed spell elements, in some cases as a way of sort of giving players, and we talk about choice and agency, we've mentioned that several times, but to give players a way to sort of choose the varying paths of how a spell maybe functions mechanically to their play style. Right, and the one thing I look at is as a way to break up the cookie cutter wizard, right? Like if you're a storm wizard, right, what separates you from another storm wizard in terms of your deck, your gear? Like, it's we try to give you gear options, but if you're gonna be a striker storm, then you probably are looking at the same handful of gears every other storm wizard is a striker. And so spellments are a way to say, can I go a different route that still keeps me in the playstyle I want, but adds some variation. And the thought process is as more spells come out with more branches, you branch A, player branches B, you both branch A on the next spell, you branch C. So now you're starting to kind of break away from the mold of what another storm wizard, is. And the more choices we give you, if they all feel meaningful and they all feel, worth it, even if they're different routes to your playstyle, the hope is that eventually you feel like a unique storm wizard. You want to feel like you're your own independent wizard, not just cosmetically, but maybe gear-wise, spell-wise, library-wise. We want you to feel like, hey, I'm my own storm wizard. I'm not like any of these other storm wizards, but I'm just as good at hitting as them. Or, hey, I'm a storm wizard that can actually kind of heal now because I grabbed some of the healing spell. I grabbed some of the new heal spells, or, I try the new healing current or something like that. And I want players to be able to use spell elements as a way to diversify who they are. And also obviously to upgrade the power a little bit too, kind of helps make that decision where, hey, this isn't necessarily maybe the playstyle I wanted to go for, but hey, I'm still doing a little more damage, so I might as well branch and try this out. And it's better than the spell was before, so why not? And it kind of let you try out a new thing. But now Artie can kind of comment on sort of where we see spell elements going with that and how we sort of plan the runway for future spells and current spells as well.
Yeah, like I was asked to kind of look at the spell element system in general and just sort of, and especially in part the economic side and in part the functionality side. And I find the system to be really kind of interesting. And maybe it was, maybe its design intent needed a little focus from where it was originally. Because what it is it's a nice sort of side progression system where you can be passively progressing these different spells that you're using as you're leveling, and then that progression comes in at irregular times, and so that can be very satisfying. And so I found that interesting. And then I also found it interesting that basically each spell, like Matt was saying, is essentially a little skill tree of progression. So I found that also really compelling. And but we also need to, again, that's the Rochambeau was there to help expand design space for us, to create a lot more room for us to kind of experiment and do different things. And so it'll give us a lot of opportunity in PvE to create meaningful choices in this progression. And so I think it needs to be more of a integrated more into the normal play experience than it had been, so that I can, because and this is no stone left unturned, like where you have to look at gear progression and reward cycle regarding gear, because gear is similar in that way. It's this it contributes to the overall power progression of the wizard, but it comes in at irregular times. And I don't know that the way our gear works now, if it's serving the same purpose as it had originally. Where I think people go to the bazaar and some other places and end up buying gear that they wear for several worlds, which means the gear dropping in that world, which could have been thought of as a progression opportunity, it isn't one anymore. And so you may go through long stretches where you're not feeling any sort of power progression rate. So that's kind of one thing. I feel like we want to get elements more integrated into normal progression and the normal play experience. And so that what that means is that we have to have a more textured, nuanced. We may need a more textured, nuanced combat experience in order for those decisions to feel meaningful. I'm going to go this way or that way, and it's kind of like what Matt was saying. I'm going to, like as an example, let's just say Fire Elf or something. Like maybe I choose to have more damage per tick on the dot. Maybe I choose to have a longer duration, more ticks to the dot. Or maybe I choose to have it create 2 dots instead of just 1. And so, but all those decisions need to sort of synergize with what it means to be a fire wizard, and also what other school you might decide to partner with your fire school. So anyway, that's sort of the practical side of it, right? So right now we're looking at all spells and having conversation about what it would mean to integrate spell elements more into the core adventuring and progression experience, like you see in later worlds, but you don't see in early worlds.
Yeah,
And
so
then
for
the
example, the example of that, just for those wondering, so that's like if you haven't got to the higher worlds, but if you're looking at sort of Caramel, or you're looking at Lemuria now, the way I designed it was that the new spells you unlock are part of a spellment path. You get them unlocked for free, and then as you complete quests in the mainline story, we literally pretty much every quest will grant you spell elements, and you get almost the equivalent of a passive upgrade. You will always be able to unlock at least one upgrade just from playing through the mainline story and getting that experience. And then obviously we double that value on side content, which again is optional, or you can go back and grind to kind of push to that final tier or to push to those final upgrade paths.
Right.
And it's a more the term I guess is it's a more passive experience, but like it's more like we wanted to incorporate some of that gain just from natural playing that you kind of like, oh, you know, maybe without noticing, like, hey,
Right.
I've noticed that my s'more machine is actually almost ready for an upgrade. Hey, I'm only like 2 away. Is there a quest I can do, or is there maybe a mob I can just go grind on real quick to kind of push that little extra? You know, it feels more dynamic, feels fluid. It's not just, you know, you have the unlock and now you're just stuck on this grind wall of, you know, higher level content. And I know Artie, you mentioned this too when we were talking about, like, you know, the lower rank spells, right? Like obviously like Firecat, for example. I mean, even if you upgraded it fully, would you use Firecat in, you know, Caramel and Lemuria? You know, would you? And the answer is probably not. But that also means, like, well, when you're earlier in the play experience, how can we make you kind of get that fluidly, maybe take a side moment to upgrade those Firecats to get you a little bit more longevity with the spell, but ultimately, you know, we're okay with maybe that sort of retiring out eventually. But the trick is, how long, you know, do we want a spell or a lower rank spell to be viable before there's almost a replacement, or before there's, you know, it's end of life.
Right.
I think
and,
Artie, go ahead, Artie.
Yeah, sorry. And that is a really important, also a really important aspect, because, you know, as I mentioned in Dev Notes, if you can have 30 spells in your library, but if only 3 or 4 are viable, you really only have 3 or 4. And so you don't really think about any of the others. Like, who thinks of Firecat now, right? Nobody. And that's okay eventually, like you said, and eventually. But what we want to do is use spell elements to try to make these spells viable, usable for a lot longer than they are. You know, so that's part of the goals as well, is to try to use spell elements to increase the number of spells that you feel could be included in your deck, to make those choices meaningful, give you a number of choices about what spells to put in your deck, what spells to upgrade. And then, like you said, right, it'll be, I'm going through, I'm adventuring, you know, maybe this spell dings or that spell dings or whatever, and maybe I'm looking to, all I need is one more, you know, all I need is like a certain number of more spell elements to hit tier 3 or something, and maybe that's where a branch happens. And so now I can kind of look at different opportunities to acquire those spell elements to kind of get me over that edge, and then make that progression choice that would have a material impact on my efficacy in combat. And so I think that's a really important point that made, you know, another reason why I liked spell elements, because it can extend the lifespan of a spell. But at the same time, we also don't want folks to sort of settle into a cookie cutter experience for extended periods of time. So we need to make sure that we're creating mobs that begin to encourage folks to incorporate newer spells and go ahead and retire the older one. You know, we want people to move through because we want the experience to be different. You know, we want it to be similar, but then maybe your tactics or maybe your deck build needs to be modified to kind of incorporate a new, you know, to react to a new spell mechanic that the monsters have, that your old spells don't necessarily deal with very well. But the other thing, as I mentioned before, from an acquisition standpoint, like, we need to look at how, you know, we want to give players opportunities and agency to choose how they may acquire something, so that, you know, they can engage with the game in the way that they want to get the things they want. Again, doesn't mean everything comes from everything, but what it means is that you have some choices to make. And right now, I don't think that, or I don't have to think. Right now, spell elements don't do that, right? You feel locked in, and you feel kind of obligated to engage in the game in a very specific way to get what you want. And, you know, again, what I had mentioned earlier, and, you know, I was going to write dev notes related to sort of the economy of things, but the PvE one I thought or Matthew and I thought was probably a better fit for now. But the idea is, again, kind of normalizing effort or normalizing value across a number of different faucets and allowing giving player agencies to sort of decide where they want to go to get the things they want. And so, and then they shouldn't feel as if they're kind of pigeonholed into a specific choice because it becomes the most economically efficient way of doing it. We should do our best to balance those things so that the players then can engage in the game, get the things they want, and go ahead and kind of progress. And that's where I see the opportunity, and I see the future of Spellements. I think it's a really cool mechanic. It's unique. I think I haven't seen a card game do this sort of thing, and so yeah, I think anyway.
I think definitely with Spellements, there's a lot of opportunity to that. You have, you can upgrade your pre-existing spells, or you can keep your Spellements and try to actually farm for different spells. With Lore Master, there's dozens of them. They're dropping. You don't know which ones you're going to get. You might be farming 10, 15 hours, but now these Spellements, you say, hey, I'm this far ahead. I'm 20% of the way done, or I'm 35 out of 100. And so there's, that really, decent opportunity to see, what spells you're upgrading, what spells you're progressing on, and what spells you can actually use in different ways that you could never use before. And I think that's kind of one of the things a lot of people are concerned about is where do Spellements kind of fall in that category, so to speak.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of Spellements right now, or at the very beginning, was more based to like Crowns packs, but now we're seeing them drop from Lore Master. We're seeing them drop from that Grizzleheim bosses and the key dungeons. Mattnetic mentioned that questing you can get more Spellements. So I don't think Spellements was necessarily meant to be given to you like, 5-6 hours you're done, you got all the Spellements. It's more kind of like over time, you build up your Spellements, not to, rush through it.
Yeah, but yeah, and I think part of it too is we want you to build those Spellements up in also a more organic way, right? You don't want to feel 100% have to go out of your way. You don't have to, like you said, we don't want you to, we want to start thinking about maybe you don't have to farm Lore Master for 15 hours if you don't want to, right? Maybe you can get halfway there through more organic play style. Part of it too is, sometimes you get Spellements you don't even want, right? So that's why, Spellements are tradable. We want you to have multiple wizards to play on. Say, hey, okay, I didn't, I'm not a nice wizard, but I got some ice Spellements. I can trade them over, in the shared bank and send them to
I was going to say that too. I really like that. You can't trade drop spells from Lore Master packs, but now with Spellements you can. Like, it's just kind of like the better alternative to just, like straight up spell drops.
Yeah, and in mind you, it's the same result, different packaging, right? So if Lore Master just gave you a spell, right, or Lore Master drops 35 Spellements, which unlocks a spell, right? I mean, it's a different packaging, but you basically got the spell, right? You've unlocked you've got enough Spellements as one drop to unlock it. And players are like, well, can I still unlock spells? And the answer is, well, yeah. If we give you 35 Spellements and that's the unlock feature of a spell, then we've given you the spell. It's just dropped in a different manner. But that also means because we did it as Spellements, if, for example, you get, that ice spell, you get those 35 ice Spellements and you're on your fire wizard, now you can trade those Spellements over and unlock it on your ice wizard, as opposed to before it was like, well, guess what, your fire now has winter moon, enjoy not casting it. So we wanted to do a little bit more with that. So we'll hopefully still retain that. But yeah, we're aware players threshold for how they want to acquire Spellements, especially for the lower level ones. Obviously, like you mentioned it, like there's, why would we have you farm level 140, 150 content to get a Fire Cat Spellment, unless there's viability in an upgrade that you could see yourself using at 150, and at the current upgrade, probably not. So, that's where players obviously draw the line. We're like, well, why am I gated behind higher level content to get something I'm not going to use anyway, and I could have used 20 levels ago? We're aware of that when we're talking about that future. Yeah. Hey, it's not me for once. Those aren't my puppies, I swear. That's not me. It usually is. It's usually me with the dog.
Yeah. Just to interject on Spellements real quick, I really like the sound of this. I think a lot of people, like the average community opinion on it, is the fact that it just takes way too long or it's way too out of the way to currently get Spellements. So I'm excited to see a potential change in that. Like, I know my fire, I haven't upgraded like a single spell since the spell elements came out, and I know that a lot of people haven't either. So I'm excited to see the system become more prevalent and more, you know, early game content rather than
Right, because like
Kind
going,
of.
going in, I think it's a fairly more difficult. I think because with spell elements, we have different spells. Some of them are like rank 1, like Thunder Snake, Fire Cat, and then rank 2, Lightning Bats, Goal, that kind of thing. And then of course, further on, there's certain spells. There's like craftable spells that kind of people use for different reasons. And so, I think getting like early on into the game is kind of where spell elements are kind of rougher. I think a lot of people are just wondering how is spell elements going to become more mainstream, like you were saying. How it's going to be more like day-to-day lifestyle.
Yeah, I think part of the problem that Kaiser brings up is he should be interested in the progression because it should be materially impacting his combat performance, and so he should be aspiring to it, right? He should look at it and he should say, "Man, I can't wait till I get this or that or whatever." And I think some of that is missing. And so, but so I'm modeling out the economy, and we're going to be looking over it in its entirety in 480 in the next in the spring milestone.
After Lumeria, we're gonna start looking at it. Yeah,
right,
they don't.
right.
1.4. They don't know. They don't know what we're talking about. 1.4.
1.732.
Yeah, that's game design. The next update. Yeah, we're gonna start exploring the next.
But to Kaiser's point, sort of is we have to determine sort of a level of effort of progression of any kind, right? Like gear acquisition or leveling, like Matt had mentioned, the XP curve and things like that. And so everything has to be paced out in terms of effort to acquisition. There's inconsistency with how the spell elements have been deployed thus far, inconsistency in terms of where, and inconsistency in terms of level of effort or level of value. And so we need to kind of normalize those things so that again, otherwise players don't feel like they have a choice to make in terms or a meaningful choice to make in terms of its acquisition. Like if you feel like it's only from packs, then all of a sudden you have no option other than packs, and it doesn't feel good, right? Or I've got to run an hour instance just to get a chance and blah blah blah, and it just doesn't feel good. And then, like I said, the choices within the spellman's progression also have to be meaningful, so that once you do hit a break point, you feel good about it, and you can reap the benefits, and you'll notice the performance difference and things like that. I mean, that's the only way it can be meaningful and rewarding to do those things. So.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what most people want to hear from that. It's just the fact that spell elements will become a more valued thing, and it's not just like, okay, I need to open this pack 300 times to get like a marginal gain. I think that that's what a lot of people want with it, and I'm really excited to hear that it's getting the attention it deserves.
That's part of what we mean when we say we're the economy of it all, right? Where we get it from, what's the level of effort. Players will almost want to feel like there's some sort of, it almost feels like there's some type of steady stream of distribution right now. It feels very sporadic, as Artie said, right? You're working twice as hard to get half as much, it feels like, or a chance to get half as much, and that necessarily is not what players are feeling is how they want to experience the gain of the Spellman system. But in the same sense, if they really want to grind it, get to that top end as quick as possible, there will be at least a level of effort that they feel is worth. I mean, there's a level of effort we make them do, but it also feels worth that level of effort. Or like you said, if you're not in a rush, you will at least organically get there eventually at a pace that is more casual. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like you said, if you're just kind of playing through the game and just sort of casually experience the game over many years, for example, you may not just be able to upgrade your Fire Cat ever just from a time threshold, right? Because you may not hit those key points, or you may not grind on the same spot. So it's like, okay, well, maybe that's something we want to think about as part of the experience, is that, with enough time of playing through, or at least in the progression, that it feels valuable to it. And then we also, like you said, we can always make more spells. We can always make more spellment paths. We have things, new tech is always being added to spells. I saw somebody say, hey, Fire Cat would be cool if Fire Cat extended a .1 tick. right?
Yeah.
And but that's, extending a dot one tick is literally, something we just got in this new update.
Right.
But it's like, that's something like, okay, cool, we could go back, we could see that, could that add a high level character to use Firecat now? Maybe. And that's, again, that's not something necessarily I'm saying we're gonna do, but it's something that opens up options for us to explore.
Right.
And so that's, that's sort of where we landed. But yeah, I think that's, we're aware. Player feedback's always good, and we're definitely listening. And we have so much for the next year to discuss about it all, which is awesome. And hopefully, big changes that players will find.
I mean, we see a lot of potential in this system. I think it was just sort of bringing some focus to its role in the game, like the Spellman system. What is it there for? Who is it there for? And I see it more as a core, potentially a core progression mechanic that goes along with leveling and gear acquisition, which means we need to calibrate progression and tiering of these spell elements to an expected reward cycle that would feel good to the player, like as they're going through a world.
Right.
They'll start to ding, their spells will start to ding as much as, their or more frequently than their level. And so that's kind of I think that where we can see spell elements provide its greatest value is in that sort of reward experience, reward cycle. As I'm questing, I'm clearly acquiring more power just through, maybe choosing to do challenging combats, or choosing to do side content, or choosing to do whatever. I'm making choices here, and it kind of could accelerate the rate at which these things happen. But yeah, I see it more as a potential core thing.
I really like just overall the concept of spell elements. I think they're definitely going to be a good alternative to just dropping, plain spells versus, 16 spells. Finally, I didn't get the spell I wanted yet, but I'm making progress on these spells. I can trade them to my other wizards if I can't use them myself. And overall, I think it's a really good kind of system that is added to the game. And as it becomes more kind of mainstream, more day-to-day, I think overall a lot of people are going to be more interested in spell elements, and definitely more appeal to wanting to do more with them.
Yeah.
And is there anything in the works, like I said, you don't have to say anything too soon, but is there anything in the works to convert any of the current spells from Lore Master into spell element drops?
You mean like spells that are not currently on a spell element path or of any kind?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're always talking about it. I mean, there's nothing definitive right now.
Or let me ask you this: is that what you guys trying to do? Kind of just phase out from just plain spell drops, that we can make progress through spell elements instead of just wanting one drop?
No, not universally. I would say that.
Yeah.
I mean, what Matt had mentioned is also an option. However, because there's certain circumstances where the experience of a sort of a Boolean acquisition is better for the game's experience, or story-wise, or kind of whatever. Now we could give you 35 spell elements like Matt had mentioned before, to kind of unlock that, if that works for us. But right now, we're looking at the entire library and deciding kind of what do we want to do with spell elements. Like I said, I feel like, and it's all in discussion, so there's no firm plans for things, but I do see it as a very valuable core progression mechanic, and I think that it would be worthwhile to us to kind of integrate it throughout everything if we could. But again, that doesn't mean we're going to take the existing acquisition method and significantly alter it, because there are reasons why. And, so we have to look at each one and just sort of make the determination as to whether or not the experience would be enhanced by converting it to a spell element acquisition method, or just leave it the way it is and then allow spell elements to be there as a progression mechanic. But like I said, no stone left unturned. So those are all conversations as we'll kind of evaluate each spell as we go.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, the main thing is making sure that if, the answer is never like, we're not going to spell and be like, there's never a no or a yes, but it's like Artie said, we want to make sure that it feels right, and we're not converting a spell to a spellment just to convert it. You know, we want to make sure it's a meaningful choice, that it's worthwhile in the goals we have set. And sometimes it might be like, hey, actually a new spell's better here for this particular reason. But I think we've converted a few previously, so you've seen that, I think, in history. I think a few of the lore ones got converted up, right? I think Pigsy, right? Am I making stuff up?
No, some of them, some of them got converted. I mean,
right, so not for no, but I could boost open the list. But so clearly there's precedent. But like Artie said, when it comes to what we want to do for the current milestone and what goals we have set, sometimes the answer is, hey, this would meet our goals if these spells got spellments, and we might say, oh, but then it might be feasible. But yeah, there's no like, yeah, you're definitely gonna see 6 in the next stuff. None of that right now, because we're still planning it out. But
yeah, and I can say definitively that not 100% of the spells would have spells.
Yeah,
Like, there are some spells that aren't going to have a progression.
Yeah,
but again, it's case by case. But I can say pretty definitively that not every spell will have progression.
But we hope to, we want to give players choice, so that helps us with that. But yeah, there are some spells I can think of that right now in its current state I would not want to put a spellment path on. I can think of one right now just to troll the players, but like Feint, right? Feint, for example, there's no need for a power increase or any type of path for Feint unless I make it a negative Feint and it just punishes you more, and we'll call it hard mode Feint or something, right? But like Feint would be something
that it's not logical. You mean it's not logical to have like a plus 100, plus 10 Feint?
Yeah, yeah. Why not? Yeah, right. I'm sure players would love it, and our game would just. Then they'd be like, why is it so easy? I'm like, because you got this.
Right.
That's an example as a joke, right? But obviously, there are some spells straight off the bat that also we still, lore spells still, we are still auditing them as we go too. Lore spells are a finicky one because they're above the regular curve. So that makes spellment pass a little harder for something that's already more powerful than it should be by base, right? Like lore spells, for example, come with a default upgrade on their own. Right, because they're technically not acquired through just standard play means, right? You have to go out of your way, you have to grind for them, or open packs or things like that to get them. So they got that little extra punch for the fact that you go out of your way to get them. But that also means, like in terms of upgrade path, that they may be a little bit more limited, kind of things like that.
And right now, like the new PvP Rochambeau spells, there's no plan or desire to create progression for those because they're kind of fundamental to the interaction. And so, what we would want to do is kind of provide some options to support and surround those things.
Yeah.
I
think we went over by a lot, so I apologize.
I'm sorry. This was supposed to be an hour stream, guys, but it's always fun, talking with y'all. No matter what it is, even if it's off topic, it's always interesting to hear from y'all.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about stuff.
I have another giveaway.
Oh, that's right.
Hi, Matt. Welcome back. Sorry.
Somebody forgot about me. You all forgot about me. I fell asleep.
I was going to check in with you. I was like, I should check in with Matt. Spark's been patiently dealing, with other stuff while we've been chatting his ears off.
That's okay. I went outside and walked around the block. Everything cool?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, we did great.
No, I was gonna say. Oh wait, Spark had something to say. Spark.
Yeah. So just kidding about that joke, right? By the way, I was here the whole time, and everything's just amazing. I didn't want to bug you guys and say, hey, we're gonna cut it an hour and a half. Chat seems to be having a good time responding to everybody, or just joining in on the commentary. So. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate. Thank you, Kaiser, and thank you, White Tiger 93, for another opportunity for us to be on the show. And I saw you given, some codes. We provided some to you earlier, so that your chat could, have some opportunities to win. I think it was crowns, 2,500 crowns per each one. Yeah. I have another one here, though. Actually, I got two. Well, I have two, but I gave you one already. Did you give that one already?
I did not.
Okay, I'll let you do that. I have another one. It's for the Sky City bundle, and I know I gave you one of those too. I don't know if you gave that out either, but I'm spoiling all of this for you. Sorry. But I got another Sky City bundle code, and the way anybody who's in chat listening right now is this is for everybody who's in chat. Go ahead and after this recording is like it'll lock, and then when we're done, it'll lock in. And it'll go on your YouTube channel, White Tiger 93, as a regular video. Go ahead and comment on that. People should be allowed to comment on it. I believe you can enable that, and just say either there or we have already on our official forums in the Wizard101 forums in the announcement section an announcement about this live stream. To this roundtable to go ahead and either comment there or in this in your recording something to the effect of I watched the roundtable and you know, some sort of comment about it, and we'll pick from all of those who mention specifically that they watched the roundtable at this point the chance to get a Sky City bundle, and depending on how many actually do that, maybe we'll give 2 or 3. I'll calibrate it. So just want to let everybody know you have a chance for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Eat.
Free stuff, guys. Free stuff.
Yeah.
Alright, so we talked a lot about different things. We've talked about stats, we talked a little bit about the intersection point, about balancing the game to where it's not overpowering for really either side. We talked a little bit about mob creation, kind of mentioned a little bit about test realm and things that have already happened, like adventure parties, being able to organize with people more. We've talked about spell mechanics, we talked about spell elements themselves. Overall, I think it was a very, very productive stream. So thank you guys so much.
Sure. Yeah, we always try to chime in, let the community know where we are, what we're thinking, and you know, as Artie will mention in the dev diary, you know, we want to know what you're thinking as well. You know, what you want from a PvE experience. You know, feedback's always welcome because we you know, we're catering to our players, you know, and our goals as well. But you know, we want everybody to feel like, you know, we're designing a PvE experience that is both engaging and rewarding to our community as a whole. And like I said, not everybody plays the game the same way. So our job as designers is to try to always cater to that. But we don't know what everybody needs until you give us feedback. So always appreciated. And I know the community has no problem giving us feedback. So continue doing what you guys do. We love it. Everything.
And Test Realm is still up at the latest World of Lemuria. That is currently available for more feedback as well. And so, does anybody have any questions that we want to ask KingsIsle while they are here? Feel free to ask in chat. Please be on topic. Don't be asking about free mounts or anything like that.
Yeah, I see Ratbeard's been in the chat, so hopefully he was able to tackle a bunch of questions while we were all going.
If speaking of questions, since we're at the end pretty much of the time, if you don't get your question asked, that forum thread that I talked about that's in our forums, you can ask there. We'll see if we can answer any maybe on KI Live when that's announced, which by the way, after this is going to be announced. It's set for December 2nd. It's in December, FYI everybody. And maybe we can answer it there. But the best chance to get your question answered, if it's not today, aside from the forum post, even better is to respond to our KI Live announcement when we encourage everybody to give their questions for the show. Ask it again there.
Yeah, I saw I think I saw one question about the Jewel Blossom plant. Is it being updated? Yes.
Oh,
there's an open ticket. It's open. That means that we're working on it. That's my answer. When, I don't know. You know, unfortunately, we are still in the throes of getting this new world. You know, wrapping up all the content for that, and you know, the new world is priority 1, and then we try to squeeze in as much quality of life as we can on top of that based on priority. I'm bouncing left and right between gear, balancing, you know, crazy stuff like that. So the hope is, yes, it'll eventually, I say the soon.tm kind of thing. For anything with any question that's, are you going to update or upgrade this thing? The answer is probably at some point, but don't know when specifically.
I did see somebody mention possibility of a level 100 elixir. I don't know if that's something y'all have discussed or not yet.
I think we've talked about it on a KI Live. I know Falmea could probably speak to that more. I think that's definitely a KI Live question. But the only response I can give is, elixirs are a very, very, very a large amount of work, and it's just finding the right time and place and making sure we have enough future content, right? Obviously, is 50 more levels a good enough runway, and we'd have to explore and discuss that. But we are aware players ask about the 150 elixir, but I think that's a good KI Live question for Fahey to answer. But I believe she mentioned it in one of them. I just don't remember her full response. So we asked, was this supposed to be an hour? Yes, we went over.
Just a little bit.
Because we'll talk. You get designers to talk about design, we'll never stop. Yeah.
I like that. Oh, I think the flow's doing, we're doing pretty good. Okay, we got 15 minutes left. We'll be fine. Hour later.
Yeah, right. It's okay. Even Artie was like, I have to be out by 5, and or was planning to do it. He stuck around too. It's the woes of being a designer.
All right. Thank you guys for coming, though. I really do appreciate it. And I know it was only supposed to be an hour, so I appreciate y'all staying around.
No, thanks for having us, and thanks for everybody in the community here that's been sticking around, that's been chatting. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's been
awesome
good.
to see this. Yeah.
PvE stands for player versus entity.
Yeah. Player versus entity, player versus enemy. It's PvE is the single, not the single player, but it's the you versus monster experience, the main experience of the game. It's not you fighting other players. There are some games that don't even have a PvE experience that are all PvP based games. But that's what PvE, player versus environment. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. I think we're good, at least on my end, unless Artie has anything last minute or Spark.
I don't think
I'm
so.
good.
No.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, it's good times.
All right, thank you guys so much. Make sure to stick around. I'm gonna be here for a few minutes talking to y'all guys. Noah might be hanging around too, but KI is probably gonna be leaving soon. So once again, thank you, Artie, Spark, Mattnetic, for all sticking around. I do appreciate it. I know it was a bit longer than we expected, but y'all guys are awesome. Keep up the good work, and overall, it's just been great. Thank y'all. And we do have a code, because we haven't wrapped up the stream yet. We do have a code. Thank you, Spark.
Saved by the bell.
Saved by the bell. Right. I know I was just scrolling through that right when Noah mentioned it. Thank you so much for Spark, because everybody wants free stuff. Everybody likes free stuff. And check it out, free stuff. So if you guys want a chance at some crowns, there is a code about to be dropped in chat. That can be used 100 times. It can be redeemed by 100 different people, not the same person, obviously. But can be redeemed 100 times for some free crowns. So have at it, guys. Get yourself some free crowns. And yeah, so if anybody else has anything they want to add, we'll just be hanging around for a few minutes.
Did you drop the code in? I didn't.
I'm about to. I'm playing a little mind game.
Nice.
I totally didn't lose the code and have to go find it. That's not what happened, what?
Well, I'll be glad to say another thank you to everybody. Much appreciated for having us on for this time. This might be our last roundtable for the year. KI Live on December 2nd at 4 o'clock is our final KI Live of the year as well. So if anybody has other general questions about the game or anything related to the gameplay that you want answered, that is a good time to ask it. The next time will be in 2022 January. Well, there'll be other times too. We respond to social and stuff. I don't want to forget about all that, but you guys know what we're talking about.
All right.
And
So
the code is dropped. People are scrambling for it now.
No, I created that during the live stream, so hope it works.
I'm not doing this to attack him or anything, but
it says expired. I gotta fix something.
Uh-oh.
So we're gonna throw not really attack him or anything, just kind of a fun deal. I remember Friendly Necromancer in his community manager days. I remember he was providing a code. I can't remember what it was for, but everybody's redeeming. It was like free permanent mouse.
Oh wow! No, So it should work now. The reason it didn't work is because I had it created for a half an hour ago, assuming that that would be the end of the show. So it went past the time. Yeah, but it should be okay now.
All right, guys. Here is a new code right here. Or did you drop it, Spark? Did you drop a code, Spark?
Oh, I can do that now. Yeah, same one. I just made a magical adjustment to it. You guys got it now? Yep, it's working now. Cool, awesome. Thanks everybody in chat for confirming. That will last just a little bit beyond this recording. So everybody who's listening, you get a chance to get it for as a thank you for everybody in chat.
All right, I think it all went well. So let me know what y'all guys' favorite things from this stream was. If there's anything y'all guys want to ask in the future, comment that down. And who knows, they might be looking through with might have some more developers reply. I don't know. It looks like Ratbeard held the fort down a little bit, going back in chat. And then, as always, KI Live is coming up December 2nd, correct?
That's right.
And so, make sure you guys ask KI then, because they'll be answering questions as they usually do on their KI streams that they do every month. And maybe I might be going crazy here, but is this the first KI Live in the last couple of years that was in December?
I'm trying to think of when we had the last one. That's a good question. I'm not sure. We usually have community ones or something else because we do have them normally in November. But the holidays is always a little bit flexible depending on what's happening with everything. So it's December this time.
It looks like, I am a bit curious. The code was redeemed quite fast. As in, like, 100 times within 3 seconds. I don't know how that works.
Are we on air still, or?
Oh yeah, we're still on air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's interesting.
Well,
we have that many people in chat, so if they're
There's only
listening in, then it was redeemed by everybody already. Because
Alright,
we got a confirmation that it worked, right? We got some people that said they got it right.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it's gone. That's sorry, guys.
Well,
alright, but thank you so much for the code. I really appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. We'll have more of those. KI Live will have more too. Always have opportunities for that. We would set them to infinite, but then I'd be worried it would run out in 30 seconds anyway.
yeah. Well, this was definitely really fun. Gotta say. I appreciate the invite.
Yep, shout out to Noah over here. He has an amazing channel full of all kinds of videos breaking down stuff, so make sure to check him out. I'll put a link to his channel in chat and in the description.
I appreciate that.
Okay, I'm gonna get going, guys. Thanks much.
Alright, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It's nice talking to you.
Alright, so
And
we'll probably live for a couple more minutes. Are you interested in stick around, Noah, or do you have to head out?
Oh yeah, I could stick around for a few minutes. Alright, so how did everyone enjoy the stream? That was a pretty fun stream, huh? We got
I've
got
learned
to talk to the devs. That was fun.
I've learned that I need to get more than one monitor.
Oh yeah, I remember streaming before getting 2 monitors. It's awful. You just need to tab out of everything 100 times within a second.
Right, because we got the YouTube chat, I got the stream OBS open, I got, the Roundtable notes, I got the dev table notes, I got Discord, and then I don't even think I've opened the game, like maybe twice the whole stream.
Yeah, you just put it in camera mode and then just left it.
So it's a good thing the game didn't crash, because there's a huge chance I wouldn't have noticed.
I think the game seemed to disconnect for a second. I don't know if that was everyone or if that was just me, but I think it happened to you too. So I don't know. Maybe too many people joined the realm for a second.
I was gonna say, because I thought my stream crashed, because I had chat open, and I saw, like, it froze, like, I don't know what happened. I was like, okay, weird, we'll just go with it.
Yeah.
Alright, but thank you guys. It was fun. Got to talk to the devs again. A little nerve-wracking, but I think we did great.
Yeah, it was definitely less. I was less nervous like a few minutes in once we got going. But you know, there was some stuff said here that's important to note. I feel like I might make a video on that tomorrow, but you know, there was some definitely interesting stuff.
I'll make sure to share that too. And I know we got a lot of stuff to talk about because spell elements to me I think is really really cool, and I understand, you know, people like, you know, it's premium currency, it's pay to win, and I think, you know, once they kind of break away from that packs only, crowns only, premium status, I think it's gonna be really awesome. Because I would rather get spell elements from farming Lore Master than one drop spell, or, you know, spell elements from packs than versus just one spell.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my that was one of the major things I wanted to bring up, was the fact that, like, I do really like spell elements. I think that they're pretty well designed. They're just a little bit limited right now, and I think once that limited status goes away, spell elements will become like a very popular thing.
Spark did extend that code a little bit, so check out chat, just put it back in for some more chances to get crowns.
Yeah.
Well, going back to like what you said, because you said you've had spell elements for spells, but you haven't even, you know, like really felt interested in it. I think, you know, kind of going from the ground up, if we had spell elements starting out at the very beginning of the game, I think it'd be a whole different perspective on that.
Definitely. I mean, like, when I'm starting out new wizards, I think it would be really cool if I could upgrade those spells and get them to, you know, do more damage. It's just the fact that usually by the time I'm either, like, the side key bosses that you can actually farm the spell elements for, usually by the time you get to them, you're already, like, past the point in using that spell. So it's like, once that changes and they start making them more easily accessible beyond packs, I feel like that's when they'll become a really good and interesting system, you know? And based on what the dev said, that's what they're looking to do, you know, make it so that it's a more easily accessible thing. So,
because in Mattnetic, didn't he say that you can also get them from doing quests in Lemuria?
Yeah, so how they work, the new ones, the new shadow spells, is every quest gives you a single spell element right up until the end, and every side quest gives you 2. This is how they did it in Caramel as well. So it means that you can upgrade the spell that you get in that world at least once by the end of it. So I think that they said that they were thinking about maybe doing something similar with lower level worlds, which, you know, it's nice to me. I like that idea.
Right, I think once they add spell elements, like, I don't think it was meant to be, you know, just, you know, 4 hours later, you're got all spell elements and you're done. I think
Absolutely.
It's more, you know, build up over time, and if it's coming to newer worlds, it's going to be a lot more interesting. And, you know, just general, once it becomes more mainstream and away from premium, I think it's going to be a big part of the game.
Yeah, I've thought the same thing. That's what I've been saying about spell elements since they came out, to be honest.
And then elixirs too, because I used to never use elixirs. Maybe once in a while I'd get an energy elixir from the crown shop, but once they added them to like the scroll of fortune, once they added them as actual drops, I mean, it's rare, but you can get them from just farming or battling bosses or questing. Now I have enough pages to actually be able to, you know, use elixirs.
Yeah, it's definitely I definitely like the way that they're going, and it definitely sounds like we're working to have some good things in the future that I'm excited about, definitely. So, yeah, and it looks like the code's working now, which is nice. I'm glad that people didn't get skamazed out of some crowns.
Right. Keyboard ninjas. Alright, but we'll probably go ahead and wrap up the stream. We were supposed to end an hour and 10 minutes ago, but you know what? It's a little over.
Yeah, we were just chatting. I mean, they were just chatting. We were just kind of along for the ride. But it was a good stream, good discussion.
I really did. I like it. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining in.
No problem. Thank you for hosting it. I definitely would not have been able to do this like by myself. Like, last stream, I don't know how you managed it, because I would not have been able to do it by myself.
I know, like, as I was going, because we talked about because I already had so much I wanted to talk about with last roundtable, but this was so like general based. I was like, yeah, I kind of want someone here for this one, and so I think you're a really good choice. So thank you.
Yeah.
All
I do
right.
appreciate that.
Before we wrap up the stream, I'm going to do a little bit of self-promotion. I am a content creator for 2 websites, Arcanum Archives and Visions of the Spiral. You can find their links on my channel. Lots of fun stuff. I do a couple of guides. I do some blogging articles. I talked about the Wizard101 being acquired, the KingsIsle being acquired, and so that was a lot of fun. I currently have a podcast with Visions of the Spiral, with more episodes coming to that very soon. So lots of exciting stuff coming from this channel. I do have a little bit of non-Wizard stuff on the channel as well, so if you guys are interested in that, but lots of fun stuff. Anything else you want to promote while you're here?
Nothing much. I mean, I got my channel. I've uploaded daily for like 2 years now, so that's an experience. If you want like PvE content, like tutorials in the game, or opinions or certain things about each thing of the game, go there. If not, that's fine too. But yeah, definitely fun, and I hope all of you, check both of us out. We're both pretty solid.
All right. Part of me wants to end and part of me doesn't want to end. It really is cool to see y'all guys. It really does mean a lot to me.
All right. Well, I think I'm gonna go. I'm getting tired.
I don't blame you. I need to get going 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But once again, thank you, man. I'll see you next time.
Problem. Yeah. See ya.
All right, everybody. We are going to wrap up soon. How do you guys think? What's all the hearts for? I don't know what all the hearts for. I'll take it from me. Thank you. All right, but thank you guys so much. It's truly mind-blowing. I started playing this game back in elementary school. I remember coming home from school. I would come home. I would used to turn on America's Funniest Home Videos because the Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader would come on right after. So I would come home, I would start writing and start, doing my homework, watching America's Funniest Home Videos and Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, and then, I'd go on, play some Wiz. And, like that was years ago. That was over a decade ago I started doing that. And now, now coming here, seeing that, I'm able to host, this stream, talk with the KingsIsle devs, talk with y'all guys. It's truly mind-boggling, and I can't even express my gratitude. So thank y'all guys. I'm just speechless. I appreciate y'all so much. It really does mean a lot, because it's not about the views. It's not about trying to make profits. It's not about any of that. It's just fun, just having fun gaming. And this YouTube channel, it just started out as just some fun little thing I would do, and just checking how big of an impact it has in my life. It's breathtaking. Both KingsIsle, Wizard101, y'all guys, this channel, it's all breathtaking and had a huge impact. So thank you guys so much. So I'm glad y'all guys enjoy the roundtable. Definitely a lot of fun. I love talking with the devs, no matter who it is. Lots of fun things. It was your first stream, Autumn. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you. It was a lot of fun. If I'd host again, take more questions from community. So when we did the roundtables, what we wanted to do was go for an hour and a half, but we had to change that because, and I don't know if you guys can hear other people outside, by the way. We're kind of doing like a little thing outside, so if you guys hear that, that's who they are. Shout out to my family. But when we first started doing these roundtables, the first one I hosted, we had a 1 hour and a half mindset, 90 minutes give or take, and that's kind of where we were aiming for, right? And so with 90 minutes, we didn't want to go past, we didn't want to go, too early to where it's just, like a cheap little short stream with not much, but we didn't want to go too long to where it's like, okay, hour 3, hour 4, hour 5, oh wait, never mind, I was asleep, this is hour 7, And so we want to shoot for an hour and a half, but we ended up saying, we have to keep it at an hour, and just by the luck of the world, I don't know how, but we managed to go 2 hours, so... And so, definitely, I do want to take more questions from chat. That was kind of a, last minute thing, like, hey, we gotta go, we need to finish this, so. So yeah, that was kind of last minute asking questions. So 100%. Keep asking questions, by the way. I'll answer them in chat if we talked about it, or after the stream. You can comment them. I'll go back and I will mention what we talked about as well. I don't know how many viewers we've had. The first time I opened the stream was 17. Second time was like 127, which is insane. 127, like that's triple digits. Who's the bone guy? I don't know. I'm the guy on the tiger. Little fun fact, I cannot exit photo mode. My game's bugged, so so I'm gonna be stuck here for the rest of the stream. But yeah, I will tell you guys. Let me go ahead and post this in chat. Let me get the link for it. They did post a developer article, so if you guys want to hear more about what KingsIsle was focused on, besides what happened in this roundtable, this will be right here. I might actually post an article about this. Actually, no. Here's what we're gonna do. We might post. I might post an article on Arcanum Archives about this roundtable, and I do have a podcast. So the next episode of my podcast might be just kind of recapping this and just learning a little bit more about or just kind of talking and discussing about the roundtable. So maybe Arcanum Archives article and Visions of the Spiral podcast. How about that? How tall am I? To be honest, I really don't know. I'm gonna say around 5'10"-ish. 5'10"-ish. TED Talk when? I don't know. I have a podcast. We can turn that into a TED Talk. Do you think there'll be significant changes to spell elements? I do. When they were first added, they were kind of, very premium. It was just all card packs. And like we had just spellman packs, and then we kind of had like that mixture. And so, I think, what's my shoe size? How do I respond to that? Do you think there will be significant changes to spellments? I do. I think because we've already made progress. It's not just, packs only. It's not just, crowns only. It's not just premium. I think further it's going to become more mainstream. We're already seeing that in Caramel and Lemuria in the later worlds. And so I think earlier on, once we start getting spell elements like Wizard City, when you're getting spell elements questing, I think it's finally going to be kind of like more mainstream, more day-to-day. You said you started playing in elementary school. What year is that? Early 2010. Early 2010. What is your favorite world? A lot of people don't believe this. But Krokotopia is my favorite world. Second is Mirage. I know a lot of people are very surprised, but I really do. I enjoy the story of Krokotopia. I enjoy that kind of real world, kind of Egyptian references and influence in that. I like Mirage. It feels wizardry. Maybe it's just me, but I really liked Mirage and Krokotopia. They're definitely top two. Yeah, spell elements for 1-pit spells would be neat. Definitely be able to get them before they go obsolete. Exactly. You like Croc? See, that's what it's about. That's what Croc people right here. Krokotopia, that's what it's about. Why? See, it's pretty. Mirage is S-tier world. It is supreme. Polaris is absolute fire in your opinion. Polaris is pretty good. Back when I was younger, I used to just despise Dragonspire, but in all reality, I think every world is great in its own way. Azteca's challenging. Azteca's not bad, it's challenging. It's long. It's a long world. You like Krog? Don't listen to the haters. I mean, hey, we don't have haters, not in this chat. Y'all are all wonderful. Krokotopia is really neat. First Arc world until you see exactly, because when you go from Wizard City, you kind of like, okay, they have a bit of everything. It's very Earth-like, but when you go into Croc, it's completely different, and it feels like a whole new playing field, and it's very kind of memorable in that sense. Shout out to my family in the back if you guys can hear them. They're currently outside doing a little thing. Your least favorite's Chrysalis? I like Chrysalis. I like the story of like this world that's been taken over, and we have to kind of... Polaris is pretty good. The thing about Polaris too is it feels, it's just fun. It's not you know, like struggling difficult. It's not insane. It's just kind of refreshing, I think. Gonna have to go. It's really late. Wish Wiz streams did more when it wasn't 3 a.m. for me. I'm sorry about that. But thank you so much for coming. I do appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you think about it, Dragonspire and Celestia are similar to both being destroyed by a Titan. Now that is interesting. You never really, you know, thought about that. That is true. We're kind of going through the conquered, demolished version of Dragonspire, and then we go to Celestia. It's kind of like trying to, you know, rediscover the world after it's been destroyed. I like that. That's a nice little comparison, because they're such polar opposite worlds. I haven't played through Mirage yet, but I've seen walkthroughs of it here on YouTube, and I really
calculated this. Now, this isn't exactly how long it takes to get to 140. This is how long it approximately would take to get to 140, and how long it took me to get to 140. So, what I did was I went to...
Alright, so we had a little bit of a problem. YouTube is bugged, so now, for whatever reason, this video is stuck in my live stream, so... so that was this Noah's video y'all guys have probably just heard a second ago. But thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and wrap up very soon. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you guys. I don't know how many people we had. It was somewhere between 15 and a couple million. that's a fair assumption. You know, it wasn't that high, but it was a fair assumption. Thank you guys so much. It means a lot, and I will see y'all guys next time. Tiger93 out.